Hey, welcome back, everybody. You are at the Still Holding Hands podcast. Chris, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Great to be home with you. I
Absolutely.
traveled last week, so
I was just going to ask, how was your week? And you can, share a little bit about, what did you do last week?
well, I traveled. I went and spent some time with our middle son and his wife, our daughter-in-law, and had a business trip. So,
But it was great. You came back on Thursday, and then we spent the weekend at a marriage conference. We volunteered at a
yes,
marriage conference.
yes,
And it
we
was
did.
fantastic. It is put on by Family Life Ministries, and it's called A Weekend to Remember. And at the conclusion or in the show notes, we will have a code that you can use so that you can get $100 off of your registration. And these conferences are all over the country, and they're like every month.
So you could either go close by, driving distance from your house, or you could make it a trip. You could pack a suitcase and jump on an airplane if you wanted to.
There you go.
So make sure you check it out. I would just say it is one of the best investments that you can make to take time to, spend that time together as a couple. And, I just want to throw out there when people go to a marriage conference, it's not necessarily that they're having
Oh,
issues, right?
exactly.
People do go to them when things are broken and they want to get it fixed, kind of like going to the doctor. If you're sick, you go to the doctor so that you can get well. But we also go to the doctor for our preventative care as well, right? We go and we have our annual exams, and the reason that we do that is to make sure we stay healthy. So I would just say take the time,
Inv-
make the
in,
effort, and invest in your
invest in it.
marriage. You will not
Invest in it.
regret it.
And so when you go to register, you can use the code Still Holding Hands, all one word, and you'll get $100 off of your registration. So we want to encourage you to do that. Find one this year and go to it. Invest in your marriage, invest in your time together. And so that was great. Last week we had, we'll call that the bonus Still Holding Hands challenge.
That's
But
right.
last week's Still Holding Hands challenge, after our podcast that we talked about from the honeymoon
To housework.
to housework, and how we encouraged you to realize that no matter where you find yourself at in your marriage timeline, that the honeymoon doesn't have to be over.
That's exactly right.
Just because the physical honeymoon, time has come and gone, you can still keep that fire lit.
That's right. So we encouraged you to get together, have dinner, either at home or a night out. And listen, if you did not complete your homework, you can still do it this week.
Absolutely.
We also encouraged you to have deep and meaningful conversation, not talking about work, not talking about the kids, but really talking about yourselves as a couple
Yeah.
and your dreams. And we had some questions for you, so we just want
Two
to
of them.
remind you of them. Question number 1, and I'll ask you this: when did you feel most connected to me this week, and what made that moment more meaningful?
I think for me, it was when we not only went to the marriage conference and we served together in a volunteer role and had some great conversations with couples. That was fantastic. But do you know when I really felt connected with you?
Tell me.
Was on Saturday evening when we came home and we had our dinner here.
Yeah.
And then we went down into our basement where we have a television, and we watched a really fun movie. And I thought, because we conversed through it. We didn't just, blank out for 2 hours. And then we talked about it afterwards
Yeah.
as well. So that, to me, that was a really good
Yeah.
connection point over this last week. How about you? What is it for you?
Yeah, for sure. That was a great one. As you were talking, I feel like when we were volunteering at the marriage conference and we all volunteered for shifts to pray for the conference attendees.
Mm.
And so when we were in that room together and we were looking at prayer requests and we were praying over the names of people that were at the conference, and like we talked about, there were names that we prayed for that we knew them personally.
Yeah.
And man, that was just really special to be able to do that.
I think we prayed over 50 or 60 people specifically individually, and then we had a number of prayer request forms that people had written out, and we had an opportunity to pray and lift them up as well.
Yeah, it's pretty
That
cool.
that was pretty incredible. All right, and the second question was this: what's one dream, big or small, that you want to work toward together this year? So what was it for you What was that one dream that you shared with your spouse that you really want to work together on this year? Chris?
And I would say what we're doing here tonight with each other. So, we've been talking about launching this podcast for a while, and we just had to say Geronimo and jump.
Yeah.
And so, just having our production meetings and just really dreaming and, creating what we feel that God's put on our heart.
Yeah. And I would have to agree with you. I think that that is, one of the things that we have been stirring. And what I think is fun is that we're doing it together. It's not a solo podcast, and those are great. But this is something that we're doing together, and we really feel that we have a couple things that we can share because it's like that commercial. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or
Yeah.
two, and
Right.
we've walked through a thing or two, which brings us to tonight's topic or
It's going to be
today's topic, and that's this. And we hinted on it at the conclusion of the last episode, but today's topic is we're better together even when we're mad. So reflecting over the past 39 plus years, almost 40 years that we've been married, we've experienced conflict.
Gasp. Yes, we have.
We and don't think that it's uncommon. Don't make it common, but don't think that it's uncommon.
Right.
Right. We like to call them intense moments of fellowship.
Some are more intense than others. And yes, that's exactly right.
And as we were preparing for this podcast, we talked and we thought about over the years. And you know what? There hasn't been a ton of them in 40 years.
No, we don't have intense moments
No,
of fellowship every day.
no. But we realized what was constant or consistent in those conflicts that we had. And the first one, and I'm probably the first one to raise both hands on this one, is selfishness. It's not considering the other person
Right.
and only thinking about myself or thinking about me. And
Yeah.
and you don't have to agree with that, but I'm just saying for me that is a big part of it. And then the second one was in these, what we realized was there was a lack or a breakdown in communication.
Most definitely.
And their reason for the conflict had to do with a miscommunication or a misunderstanding of what the other person said.
Right. Exactly. Because we don't always speak the same language. And as you have said to me a few times, I'm not inside of your head, so I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to communication, we know what we're thinking and we assume that we know what the other person is
Right.
thinking. And sometimes we do,
Right.
but other times we don't.
Right. And so, when we understand that, like even in your own marriages, and when you find yourself in, this place of having a conflict or having an intense moment of fellowship, stop and realize, what is underneath it. And, one thing I want to say before we even move on, and we might mention this over and over again on this podcast, and that is that you have a real enemy and it's not your spouse.
Well, that is so true.
The enemy is the enemy.
Yeah.
And the enemy is going to try to put a wedge in between you and your spouse and work towards getting you to that place of not only conflict or one that you can be a healthy conflict, but to get unhealthy with it.
Yeah.
And so realize that am I miscommunicating? And don't always think that you are always communicating correctly, because especially guys, you aren't. I'm just going to be honest with you. There's one thing that we learned years ago. Chris and I have been we have been, I wouldn't go so far to say been students of marriage, but we've been students of marriage. And so we have taken the time to go to marriage conferences. We have
Yep.
sat through weeks long studies on
Yep.
marriage with other couples,
Right.
whether we've led them or we've participated in them.
Yep.
And there was one that we went through years ago, and there was this one sentence, one saying that they did that has stuck with me since then, and I think probably for you as well. And that is when you find yourself in these whatever times of conflict or even outside of conflict, that you need to own your response. And the saying goes this way: is my response is my responsibility.
Right.
I need to own that. I need to, step up and say, yes, I said that, I did that. And a lot of times it's accompanied with please forgive me
Yeah. And
because
I feel like that is a really important thing in every area of our lives,
right,
whether we're driving down the road and somebody cuts us off or, somebody does something to make us mad. How am I going to respond to that? How am I going to respond to you if, you step on my feelings?
right, right.
And I can't control you, but I can certainly control me
Right.
and how
So
I
so
react.
my response is my responsibility. And I think a lot of times when we look at that conflict or that tension that comes at us, a lot of times it has to do with fear. And really that fear in the conflict means that we're incompatible. Have you thought about that? And think about, some others that we know of too that see that. And so I guess the question that we could ask to those that are watching here is that when you were growing up, did you see conflict in your home when you were younger?
Right.
And when you saw that, what did it look like?
What was the model that you saw? Yeah, so like Tim was saying, we know some individuals that they never saw their parents argue and they never saw their parents even disagree on something.
Yeah.
And that's really not healthy because every couple is going to have times that they don't agree on something. And I'm not saying that, as parents that we just like opened up our our closets and let, our children know the down and dirty about what we were working through, but I know that our children did see us work through conflict.
Yeah.
So, and they also saw that we did it in a healthy way,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so, just because you didn't experience that, we don't want you to feel like the first encounter of a challenging situation in your relationship means that you're doomed,
Right.
because that's not the truth.
So we have friends, and like Chris intimated that we talked about, they never saw their parents have any kind of conflict or a fight, right? And so after they got married, their first dust up with their spouse,
Dust up. Ooh.
yeah, they thought that they were doomed.
It's over.
It's over. But
Yeah.
that's not healthy. But you know what else is not healthy is if you saw conflict all the time with your parents
Also not healthy.
and then which led to maybe a separation or a
Mhm.
divorce. And so once again, you wonder if in that moment of a conflict or a dust up with
Mhm.
your spouse, does that mean that we're getting a divorce or does that mean that you're not like your parents? I mean, in all these different ways,
Yeah,
you
don't
know,
be
th-
on either side of the ditch,
right.
right? You
Exactly.
don't you don't want your marriage to pretend that you're just this beautiful Facebook and Instagram post, where everything is peachy keen and hunky dory. And then on the flip side, man, you don't want to have a home that's filled with chaos and conflict all the time either.
Right.
So there's a healthy and there's an unhealthy
So,
way to work through it.
So talk about the healthy way. Talk about what you personally, what you experienced. Shout out to mom and dad
Hey,
Remington.
mom. So my parents did argue, and I definitely experienced them arguing, but I also know that they made up. And my dad is the first one to say that I like arguing so I can have the time of makeup. I don't wanna do that just so that,
Yeah.
we can make out or have sex or something like that. I'd rather just do it because, we enjoy being
Right.
together. But my parents, they did have conflict. They had some pretty big issues, that I know as an adult that they went through, but I knew that my parents were always, they were for their marriage and they
Right.
were for each other. They might get mad, but at the end of the day, I knew that they loved each other and I knew that they had worked out their challenge.
And I would even say with us, and we can, kids, you can write in and you can tell us. But I know that in times with us where we had conflicts, and especially if it was in front of our children, that we made sure that they saw that we made up, that we extended or
Yeah.
asked for forgiveness and extended forgiveness back.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And that's part of the healthy part of the
Right.
conflict. So, number one, how is it that you're going to work through it? And then, how are you going to restore, that brokenness or that disconnect that you've experienced because of that intense moment of fellowship.
Right. And once again, remember the enemy is the enemy, and you are better together all the time
Yeah.
because you're a team. You're a team. So always remember that you're a team, and you can work through these things. You can work through these things. So when we look at having a healthy conflict, what does a healthy conflict look like?
A healthy conflict to me is where we're going to be able to talk and express our feelings.
Yeah.
So one person is doing the talking,
Mm.
the other person is doing the listening, and the person that's listening is not listening with the mindset, I'm putting together my rebuttal and my comeback line, to whatever it is that you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's definitely it's about communication. I also think, as we mentioned, the kind of the two consistent trends is just selfishness
Yeah.
and not considering the other person.
Right.
I feel like it's really important to practice preferring each other outside of just in that time of conflict. Do you give your spouse the best cookie? Do you give them the best whatever? And I'm not going to try to toot my own horn, but I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. But I do think about that. And there are times that I'll be like, well, I'm going to give him, the best or the first. I want to serve him. And so I think it's practicing, that when there's no conflict of your preferring your spouse
Right.
and not being selfish to just do what you want to do. When you do get into those times of disagreement, that you're going to have good practice under your
Right.
belt to know how to prefer each other.
I think too, if we look at conflict and if we can say it this way, a healthy the conflict, a lot of times it reveals things in us or about us, but it doesn't ruin us,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
And so you need to realize that there's a possibility that it's going to bring up things about you that you can work on.
You're gonna step in front of the mirror and you're
Right.
gonna see that booger hanging out of your
Yeah.
nose. You're gonna see if you really will look at yourself and how you react
Right.
to a situation, you're right. It can reveal the things that we need to work on. And we all have things that we can work on and do better. But you're right. It doesn't have to ruin us.
Right. So conflict isn't fatal.
No,
It doesn't mean failure in
no.
your relationship.
Right.
What is it going to do? It is there for formation. It's there for information
Mhm.
for us on how we can do this better. Chris, read that Bible verse that we pulled up there from James chapter 3 verse 16, and remember once again that the enemy's the enemy. Remember where the root of conflict begins, where it originates.
Right. I'm going to read out of two translations. The first is the New King James Version, and it says, envy and self seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing is there. Man,
Yeah.
isn't that the truth?
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the complete Jewish Bible, I like this one. It said, for where there are jealousy and selfish ambition, there will be disharmony and every foul practice.
Wow.
I don't know about you, but I don't want to have disharmony.
Right.
Think about in a band, right? Or in a music group. And if you could have this beautiful singer, and then if you have this person that's trying to come in and add harmony and they're not hitting the right
Right.
notes, it doesn't sound very good. It's not pleasing. It's kind of annoying. And man, I don't want my life, my marriage to be a reflection of disharmony, foul practices, and something that doesn't bring glory to God.
Right. And with that, to realize that, this disharmony, what's the opposite of it? It's harmony. It is the blending together that
Yeah.
makes a beautiful sound, right?
Right.
It's a oneness that we have. We mentioned it, and you're a team. We're a team. We are Team Peterson. And I as you were reading that, it made me think of another Bible verse, and I pulled it up here on my phone real quick. But from John's Gospel, the 17th chapter, in verse 20 and 21, it says, I am praying. This is Jesus praying. He says, I am praying not only for these disciples, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. I pray that they will all be one, just as you and I are one, as you are in me, Father, and I am in you.
Yeah.
So there's that oneness, there's that team
Yeah.
that you'll have,
Yep.
together. A team is, they're working together to accomplish the goal.
But when I think about that, that team mentality or just what that means, a movie that we watched, I don't even know how many years ago, Mighty Ducks. And do you remember there was that scene where, the coach took the kids because they were all just kind of doing their own thing. They weren't a team. They were all individuals trying to, promote themselves or whatever it is. And he like tied them together and, everybody trying to skate their own way and they didn't go anywhere. Nothing was accomplished. But when they learned to skate together as a team, then some pretty cool things
Right.
happened. And I feel like in marriage, man, when you get into those times where you're not just seeing eye to eye, you need to remember that you are team whoever. We're team Peterson.
Right.
And I know that we are on the same team and that means that we're battling together. We're not battling against each other.
Yes. Yes. No, that's a good point. We are in the fight together
Yeah.
and not apart from each other.
Yeah.
Right. So we've hit on some things here. We've talked about breakdown in communication or miscommunication. We looked at the fear that could accompany a conflict. Doesn't mean that we are incompatible. No, by
Fake news.
fake news. It does not mean that. There are we've possibly over the course of our lives have witnessed or been a part of unhealthy conflict and
Mhm.
healthy conflict
Yeah.
on both sides. And then, just to realize that the root of the conflict originates a lot of times it's from the enemy, but it's attractive to our envy and self-seeking, because we're selfish. It's about
Yeah.
me.
And man, that comes so
It
naturally if you
does.
let it.
It does.
It can just bring out the toddler 4-year-old in you just like that
Right.
because you want your own way. I want to do it my way. And
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra, your song, it's not good in marriage.
No. And to realize that you need to be one. You need the unity
Mhm.
together with your spouse. You're
Mhm.
you're a team. And, once again, don't fight each other, fight against the enemy.
Yes.
Fight against the enemy. So what are some different practical tools that we can share with
Yes.
the listening audience that they can put into practice? Maybe some things that we've done
Yep.
over the years as well.
So we're going to talk about the rules of engagement. And, I think these are really important. Of things to think about when you are having those intense moments of fellowship. So,
Mhm.
first of all, agree on fair fight rules. So, you're not going to be name calling, there's no interrupting, there's no walking away unless you've agreed to together. We need to step apart for a second, not move out of the house for a second, but we're
Yeah.
just going to step apart for a second to cool off. And let me just add to that, if you do that, pray for your spouse because I've tried this and it's really hard to be mad at you if I start to pray for you because, man, it's so convicting.
Yeah.
Here I am, I'm fuming, I'm mad at you. And then I'm starting to pray and I might be at first. And then, man, the Lord just speaks to me and I can't do that anymore. The next one is don't pull out the big
What do you
guns.
mean by that?
Don't bring up past fights or past issues or conflict and use it as a weapon or leverage. Um, if you are arguing, I think about when we raised our kids, and I remember, Joshua, you go apologize to your brother Caleb. And he would have to go to Caleb and he would have to look at him and say, I'm sorry, Caleb, will you forgive me? And then Caleb would have to respond. And so if we've done that, and if I've said, I forgive you, Tim, that argument, that conflict that we had, it's history. So um, don't bring out the big guns. Don't dig up old dirt, dead bodies and,
Yeah.
throw them at your spouse.
I think a lot of times I liken it to, the rocks and you say, "Oh, I forgive you," but I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna hold on to this rock and all of a sudden I'm gonna be making a pile of rocks. So then when the next conflict comes, I reach into my bag and I pull out, "Well, that one
Boom.
time that you did X, Y, or Z," and
Yeah.
I throw that. That's pulling out the big guns.
Yeah. Exactly.
And don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I'd say another rule of engagement is keep it between you and your spouse. Don't be running to your friends and family.
Yeah. I
And
feel like that's really one thing that you have to work on.
right.
And, especially with people and the levels of friendship that they have. I can tell you that I never went crying to my mom or my dad about you or something that was going on. Matter of fact, I remember a story. So when I was growing up, it was the greatest thing because I lived next door to my mom's parents. So they were right next door. And then my dad's parents were down the street 3 blocks.
Same street.
Same street, which was the coolest thing as a kid growing up. But I remember my mom talking about that there was an instance where she was mad at my dad and she went over to her parents' house and started to, grumble about what my dad had done. And my grandpa said, "Oh, no."
Mm.
He said, "You pack yourself up and you go right back home because you're not bringing that over here."
Great advice.
Such great
Great
advice.
advice.
I don't wanna know what my kids are fighting about. I don't want my parents to know what I'm fighting about. You need to be an adult and work out your own issues together as that team and as that couple.
Right. So a lot of times what becomes a big conflict has started off as probably something small, a small irritation.
Mhm.
And so address those. Address the small irritations as they come before they become something big, before they become a resentment that you might have. Be careful that it isn't just that you want to air out all your grievances all the time,
Ye
you know.
Yeah, like, is your spouse really doing something that's that bad that you need to address, or do you just need to check yourself?
Yeah,
You're trying to be a control freak or,
right.
you just are touchy.
Right. Toilet paper over or under.
Yep.
So, but remember that, and as we've mentioned multiple times, remember the team mindset.
Absolutely.
Remember the team
I
mindset.
remember, having just a piece of paper that I know I printed on it. It was
Yeah.
pink. I had it hanging up inside of my cupboard at work, and every day when I would go to work and I would put my purse up there, when I would open it up, there was the sign and it said Team Peterson. And, do little things like that that you can just always keep in front of you to remember that you're a team.
Right. So make sure that you remember that, that solving problems together is so much better than battling against each other,
Yeah.
during all that because you're a team. So
Think
remember that.
think about sports teams.
Right.
If you have 5 great players on the basketball team and everybody's doing their own thing, they're not gonna be as effective as if they're playing
Right.
together as a team
Right.
with the common goal and working together.
And remember, I know you probably haven't heard this tonight or during this session, and that is the enemy is the enemy.
The enemy.
Enemy is the enemy. Your spouse is not your enemy.
Yep.
So make sure to remember that team mindset. Also, in these times of intense moments of fellowship, conflict, fighting, whatever you want to address it as, but if you can pause, listen, look to repair what's going on. The greatest thing that you can do, and that we've mentioned earlier, and that is repentance and forgiveness. Repentance and forgiveness. In the book of James chapter 1 verse 19, out of the Passion translation, it says, "My dearest brothers and sisters, take this to heart. Be quick to listen, but slow to speak and slow to become angry."
They say, we've heard this, that you have 2 ears and you have 1 mouth, and that's that way for a reason. So you should be listening more than you're speaking.
So with that, have a heartfelt apology.
Yes.
I'm sorry for, then
Will
name
you
it,
Yep, name
and
it
then
and
name
then
it.
say,
Will
"Will
you
you forgive
forgive
me?"
me?
Because that puts you on the spot.
Right.
And I know that we've said that to each other, "I'm sorry for whatever," will you forgive me? And sometimes it takes 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and we say, yes, I forgive you.
There's been times where she has did this to me and I've said no. And then I'm convicted. So
Uh-huh.
I do offer forgiveness and ask for forgiveness myself
Yeah.
for being that way.
I mean, I think if you look at it like this, if I mess up, I want you to be quick to forgive me.
Right.
So we should reciprocate the same
Exactly.
thing. Quick to forgive.
Quick to forgive. Quick to forgive. We have had a great, session here tonight. I don't even know if you want to call it a session. I almost seem like we're,
We're hanging out.
we're hanging out. But we've had a great time. And we've talked through some things that are somewhat natural, don't make them common, but they're natural. And there are definitely ways to get through these and be productive with them. And
Yes.
so we want to encourage you to go back and listen to this again. But before we conclude tonight, we have our Still Holding Hands challenge for this week. Chris, what do we have this week for our Still Holding Hands challenge?
So this week, we want to encourage you to sit down and to discuss what you experienced growing up when it came to conflict. Was it healthy or was it unhealthy? Talk through those experiences that you had.
Yeah. Also, practice listening to your spouse and then recap what you think that you heard them expressing. So they say something to you and you just say, what I thought I heard you say is, or what I heard you say is, and then repeat it back to them. Because sometimes they'll say, no, that's not what I said. And then that way you can have a more productive type of conversation. But practice that.
Yeah.
And don't try to slip the other person up.
Yeah.
You're a team. You're wanting to work on this. You want to work on this together. Remember to use those practical tools that we talked about. No name calling.
No interrupting, no walking away unless it's agreed upon. Don't pull out those big guns. If you've forgiven, it's forgotten, right? You're not going to dig up those dead bodies.
Those things from the past.
Don't run to your family or friends. Deal with your issue, your situation together without pulling other people in. And remember that you are a team. I know we've said it a million times. We're going to keep telling you that.
That's
You're
right.
a team.
That's right. You are a team. So remember that with conflict is not fatal. It reveals, it doesn't ruin. And so on our next Still Holding Hands, we're going to look at rekindling the romance in the everyday.
Ooh,
there you go.
That's going to be fun.
So if this episode has resonated with you, please hit subscribe, share with another couple, and it would really help us if you left us a review. It'll go a long way. And if you know of a newly married couple, or really any couple, anybody that's been married that might ask, is this normal? Send this their way.
And if you have something that you would like us to talk about, send us a message and say, hey, I'd really like it if you would talk about whatever. And we'd love to hear what you have to say.
That's right. And you can email us. You can email us at stillholdinghands@gmail.com and we can answer those. I'm sure that there's going to come a time where we're going to do some Q&A and answer, some of these questions. So thank you so much for spending the time with us. And we trust and pray that the things that we are sharing with you about our lives, that it resonates with you and it's helping you along the lines. Take a look at in the show notes. We'll have that discount code that you can use for a weekend to remember anywhere around the country. With that,
we'll see you next time.
Still hold hands.